Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about design exercise, specifically whiteboard challenge. There are different type of design exercises you might come across when you go for UX design interviews, range from app critics, whiteboard challenge, or the type of design exercises that can take even longer, where you will be given a problem to solve and then do the redesign or come up with a new design to solve a design problem. So today we're going to focus really on whiteboard. With the new norm that we are, a lot of us are probably still working from home remotely. I'm sure the actual whiteboard challenge as part of the interviewing process is also evolving. Let alone the tools or formats, which I'm sure has been changing a lot in the past few months as a lot of companies are adopting like virtual interviewing process. So this video is really meant to focus on a few tips that I learned from my past experience that hopefully can help you guys better prepared for those kind of whiteboard challenges. So the first tips is to have a framework. I think comes to whiteboard challenge, the time frame is usually take somewhere around 30 minutes to up to an hour. And I think it's critical to have a plan how you're going to use your time and how you're going to use the space. So to have a framework to follow is extremely helpful, and that also helped me like take off the tons of pressure of how am I going to approach an unknown problem thrown at a spot at an interview. So to have a framework, there are different articles online talking about how to prepare for a whiteboard challenge, and there are different type of framework you can follow as you prefer. And to me, one framework that I thought it works pretty well, I tend to follow is a 5 steps framework. You can plan your whiteboard accordingly. You can write those down first, or as you come along during the whiteboard challenge during this interview. So the first one is identify what is the challenge. So basically the problem statement, understand, okay, what is the goal? What is the context? And, for example, if the challenge you're given is to design a interface for a smart fridge, then you can ask questions, for example, what are some of the frictions? What are the problems that we're trying to solve here? And the second thing is focus on who are the users. Is there a target audience? And who are we designing this for? And it's from there, then you can kind of understand what is the use case. And it's really helpful, I think, at the start to really think big and think wide. And then as you ask the questions along the way, to narrow down to what you want to focus on during this interview. The third thing is, so following the challenge and users, you can start, really penciling down what are the main steps. What I meant by main steps is really what are the main steps involved in this user flow. There are different ways to do that. I personally prefer to actually lay out the user flow, which I think it's really helpful to understand the step-by-step visually. So, but sometimes I think it's also helpful. You can start with a quick bullet point, like to really just list out the main steps. For example, open the app, log in, and then, for example, get onto the dashboard, search for something. And so, I think depends on what is the actual task, what is the problem you're solving here. have a success point set up, which will be the end of this task flow, and then try to connect the dot from the starting point to the end point. And I think as a UX designer, be able to really get a clear sense of what is the task flow or what is the customer journey map is really crucial. So this part you do want to, I think, spend a good amount of time. If there's something or anything you're unclear about, ask tons of questions, and the interviewer is there, especially during this whiteboard challenge. They are there to help you. They are there to answer your questions, to guide you through, and to work together with you like a teammate. So it's not really meant for you on your own to solve this whole whiteboard challenge, and you have a teammate there. So ask tons of questions as you develop this user flow. The next thing is you probably want to get into UI, a couple of key screens to mock up some ideas. This depends, I think. Sometimes it's probably critical, sometimes it's not. Depends on the job you're interviewing for. And I think it always doesn't hurt to ask. At the beginning, you can ask, like, what is the expectation? Would you like to get to some high fidelity or get into some sketch of keyframes to get into the UI at the end? Or shall we focus more on the user flow? Definitely feel free to ask those questions at the beginning, so you can actually set up the expectation and you have a clear understanding of how you want to spend the time. Okay, now when you get onto the UI, don't worry too much about how pretty you can actually draw on a whiteboard. It doesn't matter. It's the point of here is to really show, again, your thinking process. So I think it's important to really identify what are the keyframes you want to draw out, because I think time passes really fast when it gets to whiteboard challenge. You have, let's say we have a whole hour, and besides the start and ending to get around, you probably have not really a lot of time to actually draw too many UI or actual keyframes. So I think it's critical to actually focus the energy on the right part. So after you're done with the user flow, I think it's always good to ask the interviewer. You can suggest, for example, I think the dashboard is really critical, or I think this feed page is critical part. How about let's focus on this and develop a couple of keyframes around there. So yeah, I think it's always helpful to show that you are a team player. You are constantly checking with the interviewer, your teammate, what's their thoughts around that, and then work together to narrow down to the actual keyframes. And again, here the whole point is to elaborate your thinking process. For example, if you're sketching a screen for the dashboard, just making this app, say if you have a search bar at the top, a couple of key elements in the center, for example, the interface showing, I don't know, fruit, juice, or meat, and frozen stuff, and probably along with expiring date or whatever. And below that you might have, I don't know, a couple of reminders. It matters more to really explain, for example, why you have certain element in the dashboard. So do not just throw on components in a screen. Instead, have a clear logic, and when you draw something, at the same time, the best way I think is to speak out loud what you're thinking as you are sketching out the UI. So if you're not doing that, you're probably going to be prompt about with questions from the interviewer, like, could you explain me why you're doing this, or why, tell me more about why you're designing the dashboard in this way. So you always want to really, I think out loud and explain your design rationales as you're moving along the process. The last one is summary. So we started with understanding the challenge, the problem, then who are the users, what's the use case, main steps is the third one, and then we got to UI and keyframes. The last thing, I think, it's usually a lot of people forget about that or don't spend too few time on it, but I think it's critical, which is the ending, is the summary. It's of course you can plan the best as you can for how much time you want to spend and during this whiteboard challenge, but at the end, definitely always try to save at least 5 minutes to give a summary, walk through the whole process, what you have done during this whiteboard challenge. For example, knowing that a problem is to design the UI for a smart fridge, and the users is for people who are open to smart home devices, and what these are the key steps that we have walked through, and to solve the problem that by the statement, this is what we have done, this is what and at the end, I think, this is a very limited time for solving a actual design problem, and there's no way you can think about every single details or touched all the different perspectives. So at the end, I think it's always helpful to also leave some time for okay, beyond what we have walked through, if I had more time, what would you like to do? So, knowing that the constraints of blah, 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 if I had more time, how can you further improve, or what other things you would like to focus on to, continue explore the solutions for this design challenge. So this is the framework that, just for your reference, I think I will post a couple of links along with this video, where you will find some articles talking about different frameworks for whiteboard challenge. And the other one I think comes up quite often is to focus on the who, what, when, where, why. That's another approach you can take to use as a guidance how you approach the whiteboard challenge. So the next tip I have for you is to speak out loud. It's I think for the whiteboard challenge, the interaction and collaboration with the interviewer is actually a key part of it. So as you're thinking or writing things down on the whiteboard, it's really important to keep that energy, keep that dialogue going. And so you do want to speak out loud and talk it through as you're thinking. I know it can be pretty challenged, especially you're in a interviewing mode and you probably feel quite a lot of anxiety and pressure, and being at a spot given a challenge to solve by itself, it's already probably taking a lot of energy to think, okay, where I'm gonna go, how am I gonna solve this problem? But I just want to encourage you to, instead of focus your energy on that, actually focus your energy at the moment. So it's probably easier to say than actually practice. So I think you do want to speak out loud as you are developing your design along the way. So for example, like back to this example, you given a challenge to design this experience for interface for a smart fridge. How do you want to approach this problem? Like why we're designing this? You can ask the questions, for example, what are some pain points, like existing ongoing pain points for users? For example, in everyday life for busy families, people tends to, like, for example, run out of are too busy and run out of milk. And if there's a way to set up a reminder in the fridge, it can help the user to get restock before they get into a panic mode, like, oh gosh, we're running out of something. So just to, it's always helpful, I think, to speak out loud. If you have a question in your mind, for example, why we're doing this design for smart fridge. Why do we need a smart fridge? What's the point of designing a UI or UX for smart fridge? Ask those questions. You might have a first feeling like when you're given on the spot for a challenge to solve, and you're thinking, oh gosh, why? Like sometimes I think in the past I've seen like design challenge, for example, redesign the ATM machine, or for example, redesign a microwave. By the first reaction, it might feel surprising. Like, how am I gonna redesign something like a microwave, which is like existing there for, I don't know, hundreds of years? And so ask the question is a key. So don't hold it back while you're thinking through, and of course ask it in a way that is open. The more open you're asking the question, the better you can actually move forward and get a sense of direction and get some sense of where you're going with the help from the interviewer. So speak out loud and elaborate your thinking process. The last thing I want to talk about is practice. So same as everything else, pretty much, to anything to do with the interview, I think practice is the key, obviously, especially for a whiteboard challenge. There are different tools you can use. Again, there's, I think, a whiteboard generator, basically a picker. You can set a level and it's automatically generate a topic or challenge that you can start right away. So I think practice is a key, because you really need to get comfortable talking out loud what you're thinking. And it's critical that, as a designer, you are able to communicate your thinking process, your design rationales, when you agree or when you disagree, why, and when someone presented an idea or solution, what's your thinking about it. And if you're receiving feedback, especially critical feedbacks or critiques, how you're handling that. Those are all things, I think, of course, it takes years to build up those experience, but you can also practice, and especially the part thinking out loud, to elaborate your what's going on in your brain, and use your own language to explain to your teammate. It's really important. So, and again, I think the more you practice, the more you do this, you will get more comfortable. I've seen, like, in the interviews, like, people will put down their frameworks first on the whiteboard or draw lines, so they actually can save enough space when they get into the actual UI, or save enough space for notes versus flow. So there are different ways to do that. It's really up to you, what works for you the best. And also one other comment I had is, no matter how much you prepare for a whiteboard challenge, it's not a presentation and it is not meant to be perfect. So I think being authentic is also really a key as part of, to show the best of who you are and how you work as a UX designer. It's also help you to relax as well, to be true to yourself, and just try to relax and be authentic as you are dealing with the whiteboard challenge as part of the interview. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to make mistake. And if you propose something and the interviewer might think, okay, that might not be what we want to do, and you will get that feedback. It's okay, and it's in the real world. As designers, there's almost never happened you will find the right solution right away by presented a problem. And in fact, it probably there's never gonna be the perfect solution, and it's usually always an evolving process. So knowing that, I think can really help you lose a little bit and to feel more comfortable by no matter speaking out loud or drawing things, writing things down. There's really, I know I mentioned this at the beginning, but just want to say this again. It's whiteboard challenge is not about finding the right solution or have the perfect answer. It is a really dynamic process, which actually fascinating to me, because sometimes you generate really brilliant ideas as you probably never thought yourself will come up with something like that on the spot. And in fact, the actual collaboration process is something I think what the whiteboard challenge is really about. So embrace it and practice. Practice. And I'm sure the more you do this, you'll feel a lot more comfortable. So that's really all I have for today. I will have a couple of links along with the video that about resource that might be helpful for you to prep for whiteboard challenge. And if you're interested on any other topic or would you like to hear more about how you handle other type of design challenge, feel free to leave me a comment, and I will definitely think about it and probably create more videos around this topic in future. So I will see you guys next time. Bye.